One brother emails and says, I pray dhuhr at my workplace every single day, and obviously it is time for dhuhr, and I feel uncomfortable washing my feet in the sink for obvious reasons. I know there's a controversy over Masah or wiping over the socks. Can you please explain to us and give us what your position is on the wiping over the socks? Okay.
وما أرسلنا من قبلك إلا رجالا نوحي إليهم فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون.
So this is the simple question, masah over the socks, not over the shoe or over the khuf or the leather. So realize, dear brother in Islam, and all of us benefit from this, brothers and sisters, because the rulings apply to both men and women. There's no difference of opinion between men and women when it comes to wiping over the socks. Exactly the same applies to men, applies to women. Realize that wiping over a full covering that is impermeable from water, which is leather or something of that nature, wiping over a full covering of the foot that covers the ankles and is impermeable, is unanimously accepted by all of the scholars of Islam, or I should say all of the scholars of Sunni Islam, so much so that it became a point of theology. You find this in Aqidah Tahawiyya, that Sunni Muslims believe it is permissible to wipe over the khuf, which is the leather sock. Why? Because the other non-Sunni group said, you don't have to, this thing is not permissible. So the non-Sunni group, the famous non-Sunni, there's only one non-Sunni famous group, right? When I say non-Sunni, there's one group you should think of. It says you're not allowed to wipe over the sock. And the Khawarij said you cannot wipe over the socks. And others said you cannot wipe over, not the sock, the leather sock, let's say. So it became a point of theology because so many ahadith mention the Prophet ﷺ wiping over the leather sock, which is the khuf in Arabic. So all the madahib agree. And this is something you will find no controversy, that if you're wearing a covering that covers the ankle, and that is impermeable to water, which is leather, for example, or anything impermeable to water, right? And you have wudu and you put your feet into this shoe or this leather sock in the state of wudu, that you may then do masah 1 day when you're not traveling and 3 days if you are traveling. This is unanimous, no ikhtilaf. But who wears leather socks in our times? Nobody. So the ikhtilaf comes over what issue? This is why I want you to be clear here. The controversy is over socks that are permeable. That's the controversy. It's not over masah. Some people don't understand, say, oh, there's a controversy over masah. No, there is no controversy over masah. Zero. It is by unanimous consensus allowed, and even the Quran references the permissibility of masah in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 6, the famous one, and it's a bit advanced here, but basically وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ versus وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ, you can explicitly derive masah from the verse in the Quran. Wipe over your feet is the verse in the Quran, and it can also be read wash over your feet in the qira'at of the Quran. So the point is, it is very, very explicit. Now, as for the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, it is mutawatir. Over 20 sahaba reported masah over khuf. And that's why there is no controversy, as we said in Sunni Islam. The most famous hadith, which you should all be aware of, is the hadith of Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali. That Jarir ibn Abdullah went to the bathroom, relieved himself, came back, and he wiped over the sock. His students said, how can you wipe over the sock? And he said, why shouldn't I? I saw the Prophet ﷺ use the restroom, come back, and then wipe over his sock. In another version, the Sahabi said, I came down to take the sock, the shoe. When I say sock right now, think of leather sock. To take the khuf out from the Prophet ﷺ, and he said to me, leave it on, for I wore them when I was in the state of wudu, and I saw him wipe over the khuf, right? Wipe over the khuf. And there are many, many narrations in this regard. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, the famous Shaykh of Abu Hanifa, Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, the greatest scholar of Kufa, of the students of the Sahaba, he said, we would love this hadith of Jarir ibn Abdullah because Jarir accepted Islam after Surah Ma'idah was revealed. Now, what does it got to do with anything? Surah Ma'idah is the surah in which Allah talks about wudu. O you who believe, when you stand up to pray, then wash your face and wipe your head and wash your hands and your feet. This ayah is in Surah which one? Ma'idah. Jarir accepted Islam after Ma'idah. And Jarir is saying, I saw with my own eyes. After this verse was revealed, the Prophet ﷺ did what? Wipe over the socks, the leather sock. And so, An-Nakha'i is saying, we all loved this hadith because we can use it to refute those who say wiping is abrogated. It's not abrogated. The Quran came and the Prophet ﷺ is still wiping over the sock. So, we have all of this, and that's why Imam An-Nawawi says, there is ijma' over anyone whom we care about ijma', that it is allowed to wipe over the khuf, whether you're traveling or you're safar, whether you're a woman or a male, whether you have a reason or you don't have a reason. You don't even need a reason to wipe over the khuf. You don't have to be sick, you don't have to be traveling, only the time frame differences. Otherwise, there is ijma', there's no controversy. Okay, now that we've talked about no controversy, so for example, no controversy would be over, mashallah, tabarakallah, Texas boots. Okay? I have to say this in Texas. So you have the cowboy boots. The cowboy boots, mashallah, this is now khuf right there. This is the Texan khuf. So if you're wearing cowboy boots and you have wudu when you wore them, by unanimous consensus, you can wipe over. Now I think everybody's going to go buy cowboy boots to work, and now you're going to be real Texan when you go to work. You can do masah over the cowboy boots. No problem with something like that. Two conditions. Number one, covering the ankle. Number two, impermeable. Okay, now we get to the controversy. What is the controversy? The controversy is what if it's not a leather sock? As for not covering the ankle, no scholar says if you're wearing a sock that goes below the ankle, you cannot do masah. No question. It has to cover the ankle. That's clear. Now, what if it is not a leather sock? And the socks that we wear in our times, right? All of us, we wear nylon or cotton or polyester. These are the socks that we wear. And then we put our shoe over that. Now, this is where the controversy comes. And three of the madhabs essentially do not allow wiping over impermeable socks, and one of them allows it. So the Hanafi madhab, we have Al-Haskafi in his Ad-Durr al-Mukhtar. He says that it is only allowed to wipe over covering of the leg if they are very thick. He doesn't say leather. That's another common misconception. Some people say Hanafi say it has to be leather. No, the Hanafis don't say it has to be leather. The Hanafis say it must be thick, such that you can walk one farsakh, which is like more than 5 kilometers, right? 3, 4, 5 miles. You can walk so many miles. Yani one farsakh you can walk and the sock will remain, and it will not be. So basically, it's an independent shoe almost. Okay, it's an independent shoe. That's what they are saying. And Al-Khalil in his Mukhtasar, he says that it is allowed for the male or the female in travel and non-travel that they may wipe over the socks if they are made out of leather. So a leather sock, meaning impermeable. And the same goes for the Shafi'is. Imam An-Nawawi also have a quote here and others. So the three madhabs say that it must be an impermeable sock. The one madhab that is left is which one? The Hanbali madhab. And the Hanbali madhab, out of the four madhabs, it was very clear that both the leather and the non-leather sock is allowed to do masah over. And this is something that they defended. And Ibn Qudama, in his famous book Al-Mughni, he basically mentions that anything that covers the ankle, and you can walk a little bit, not 5 kilometers or so, you can just walk. It's something that is an independent foot covering, which is basically any sock of our times. It takes the ruling of the khuf and you can do masah over it. And Ibn Taymiyyah defended this position, and he goes, anything that covers the feet, even if it is very thin, as long as you call it a sock, jawrab, then it is something that is permissible. And Ibn Hazm, as well, famous scholar of the past, he also said this, and many of the modern scholars as well say this. As well, the Majlis al-Islami of the Rabita, they have a fatwa on this, that it is completely permissible to do masah over cotton and polyester and wool and it is not a condition that they be made out of leather. Even if the Shafi'is and Malikis and Hanafi said this, they said that it is not a condition. And then what is their evidence? All of them, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Hazm, the Hanbali madhab, and many modern scholars. What is their evidence? The evidence is the authentic hadith in Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, and Musnad Imam Ahmad. Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah said that I saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to do masah ala al-jawrabaini wan-na'layn, over his jawrab and his shoe. Now, in Arabic, khuf is a sock that is made out of leather, and jawrab is a sock that is made out of cloth. And in this hadith, the word jawrab is mentioned. So he wiped over the jawrab. It's explicit in the hadith, and it is an authentic hadith. Now, the other three, they either said that, well, he meant a khuf, or they said, well, this is a jawrab that is impermeable and made out of this and that, and they kind of put all of these conditions on it. Nonetheless, Ibn Taymiyyah has a very long section in his fatwa in which he says the goal because of which Allah revealed the wiping over the sock was to make easy wudu. And for us to bring so many conditions that are not found in the Quran and Sunnah, it defeats the purpose of Allah gifting us Masah al-Khuffayn. The point is that you make life easy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not. So, because when you look at the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ did not give any conditions at all. These are later madhabs, and we respect them. You know my position. I respect all the madhabs. But when there's a diversity of opinion, if you wish to follow a particular madhab, no problem from me, and that's why I'm giving you all the madhabs. That's why I'm presenting the platter to you. If you want to be a Hanafi and you want to follow it, alhamdulillah, that's no problem. But if you ask me, what is my humble opinion, Hanbali opinion, what is my Hanbali opinion? Not just because I am Hanbali overall, because I told you I'm overall Hanbali, but it is also my position that it is permissible for a person to follow another authority and say this position is the correct one. It's not you're not fatwa shopping. You ask me a position, I'm giving you my opinion. It is my opinion based on the evidences that, number one, it is authentically narrated in multiple ahadith that the Prophet wiped over the jawrab, and the jawrab is the word that means a sock made out of cloth. Number two, the Prophet ﷺ did not put any condition. It is true that most of the Arabs at that time wore leather socks, but that was the custom. That was the default. So he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, usually wiped over the leather socks. Therefore, that is the default because that's what they had at that time. Even cloth was a scarcity, by the way. Why would you put it on your shoe when you need something to cover your shoe in that environment, whatnot? So cloth socks were not the default. Leather socks were. But in that environment, our Prophet ﷺ, if it was only allowed for one type, he should have said, Masah is only allowed for khuf and not for jawrab. But he didn't. The Sharia came and allowed it. Our Prophet ﷺ demonstrated it as allowed. So anyone who puts a condition, they need to be telling us where these conditions come from. And with utmost respect to the other three madhabs, the Hanbalis have a point here. And Ibn Taymiyyah says this. The goal is to make it easy, not to make it difficult. So this whole notion of you have to walk 1,000 yards, you have to make sure there's no hole the size of this and that. Ibn al-Qayyim says, can you imagine any Sahabi did not have a hole in his sock? Can you imagine? And this is can you imagine that? So everybody has holes in their socks. The Sahaba were dirt poor. You don't think they had a hole in their so to have a condition that the hole cannot be more than 2.7 centimeters. These things, with utmost respect, but you're making the religion, these conditions are coming and it goes against the purpose of Allah revealing a concession to us. So both Ibn Taymiyyah and Al-Qayyim, they are somewhat defensive of the Hanbali position, and I find myself agreeing with this, that yes, you may do masah over any sock as long as it is called a sock. The Sunnah proves this explicitly, and the goals of the Sharia prove it implicitly. Is that clear? Explain this. The Sunnah proves it explicit. Masah al-jawrabain. And the hadith is in Abu Dawud and Musnad Imam Ahmad by Mughira ibn Shu'bah. And the goals of the Sharia prove it implicitly that it is allowed. Now, having said that, the final point here, what is to be done if you are wearing a sock that covers the ankle? Because as we said, if the sock does not cover the ankle, there is no discussion. End of story. You have to take it off and do washing of the feet. Now, what if it covers the ankle and you put your shoe on top of the covered sock, but the shoe does not cover the ankle. So we have a number of scenarios. First scenario, your shoe covers your ankle, in which case, clearly you can do masah over the shoe. You're wearing a boot, you're wearing anything that is a big covering, right? Or these hiking boots that go all the way up. Clearly, you can do masah over that. There's no question, there's no ikhtilaf amongst the Hanbalis. And the other three would say only if the shoe is impermeable. We gave that distinction, right? And by the way, most of the shoes here, especially the hiking shoes, whatnot, they're impermeable. They don't want water to seep in. So according to those madhab, it would be allowed. It doesn't have to be leather. The point is water should not go into the three madhabs. The Hanbali said even if water goes in, doesn't matter. That's the point that you're allowed to do masah. So clearly the first scenario, if the shoe goes above the ankle, and it is impermeable, all three madhabs allow. Understand? Now, the controversy will come if the shoe goes beneath the ankle and the sock is above the ankle, which is our culture and custom in the Western world. Most of our fancy shoes are beneath the ankle and the sock is above the ankle. And the Majlis al-Fiqhi of Europe and others, they have spoken about this in detail. And I always like to quote councils because then nobody can say it's my personal opinion. Sometimes I will give you my personal, but I try to avoid that and I quote you respected scholars and whatnot so that I get out of the picture. And their position is that, it's an interesting one, listen to this. In those days, most of these cloth socks were essentially wraparounds. In other words, they're not like ours that you pull them up. It would be a strip and you would wrap your feet, right? A type of band-aid. They would do like that. So it's not a one piece that you pull on. It is multi-layered, right? And the concept that we have of a thin sock to protect you from a shoe, that type of stuff wasn't in back then. This is something now. So the Majma' said that in this case, really, if you look at it, as long as you had wudu, because I mentioned this, you should all understand, if you don't have wudu, then this doesn't come. You have to have wudu in the morning, meaning when you put your shoes and socks on, not in the morning. But whenever you put your shoes and socks on, you need to have wudu, okay? Now, this Majma' said, if you look at it, this is essentially a multi-layered one entity. Just like imagine if you had a band-aid sock and then you took one layer above the ankle, then you went back down and did 3-4 layers on the foot itself. So the foot is thicker, band-aid wise, and above the ankle is one layer. It's considered one item. The point is it is covering, the hukum is the same. So they said that given this modern circumstance, you're not going to find a classical position because this is something new now, our style that we have. They said this qiyas is there, that this is 1 foot piece. So as long as you wore your sock and your shoe in the state of wudu in one wudu, right? You understand this point? You wore your sock and then you wore your shoes and you had wudu. Then you may do masah over the shoe because you essentially wore it as one piece and it can be counted as one piece. Now, if you take your shoes off according to this position, then you will have an issue. And if you don't have wudu when you place the shoe on, so then you will have to take your shoe off and then do it with the sock. And this is one opinion even in this issue. Bottom line, Allah knows best, but Allah gave this concession, is very clear, to make life easy. Allah says, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. There is no difficulty in this religion. Allah says, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرِ. Allah wants to make things easy. Our Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يُحِبُّ أَن يُؤْتَى رُخَصَهُ. Allah loves that the easy things He has given you, you should take advantage of them. Don't reject them. And that's why in the context of praying 4 verses 2 when you're traveling, you are not supposed to pray 4 because Allah gifted you. You can pray 2. And Allah wants you to accept His gift. When you're allowed to pray 2, when you are actually musafir, you're supposed to pray 2, as we all know. It is against the sunnah to pray 4. And in this context, our Prophet ﷺ said, Allah loves that when He's given you a rukhas, an easy thing, you take advantage of it. So this is Ibn Taymiyyah's fatwa, that the whole concept of masah is a rukhsa from Allah. So why make it difficult? Make it easy. As long as you have wudu and your footwear covers the ankle, then insha'Allah ta'ala you may do masah over that entire piece, and therefore you do not even have to take your shoe off. Have the niyyah that you're going to do wudu in the morning, wear your socks and your shoes, and then for the rest of the day at work you can do masah even over the shoe. And if you don't remember whether you had wudu for the shoe or not, maybe you wore your socks because it's cold these days, then you put your shoe on later on. If you forgot that, just to be on the safe side, you may take your feet out of the actual footwear, the shoe, and do masah over the socks. But in my humble opinion, the Hanbali madhab, Ibn Hazm, At-Tabari, many ulama of our times, and more ulama of our times, even many of the madhabi ulama in our times, they are rethinking through, they're looking at all of these explicit evidences. Many of the Shafi'i scholars of our times, by the way, allow masah over the jawrab. I was listening to some YouTube video, some of the Azhari scholars, now even though they're Shafi'i, and technically their madhab does not allow it, but one of their great scholars was saying, look, the hadith is very clear. The Mughira ibn Shu'bah hadith that the Prophet wiped over the sock. And he said this hadith is very clear, and he's giving the fatwa. One of the main sheikhs of Azhar, and he's Shafi'i, he's saying the hadith is very clear. So Allah knows best. It seems to be no problem whatsoever to do masah over any footwear whatsoever that constitutes a footwear. And this is of the goals of the Sharia. And you may do your masah 24 hours when you are not traveling, and 76 hours, 3 days and nights when you are traveling, inshaAllah ta'ala. How can I say no to your question? Very quick. Bismillah, go ahead.
I see here in this area, they're making masah from the front and something just from the bottom. Which one?
So our brother is asking a good question that I didn't talk about. Does masah done on the top or on the bottom? Ali ibn Abi Talib said, hadith is in Sunan Abu Dawood. Sunan Abi Dawood. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, if our religion were to be based upon what my logic and reason says, then I would have done masah on the bottom of my sock, my khuf. But I saw the Prophet ﷺ do masah on the top of the khuf. This hadith is in Abu Dawood, and Ali ibn Abi Talib said this. If the religion were to be based upon what I think is common sense, logic, rationality, then I would have thought masah should be done at the bottom. But I saw the Prophet ﷺ do masah on the top. And by the way, this shows that masah is symbolic. Masah is symbolic because you just a little bit of drops of water and you just rub on the top. Even though we all know when you're walking is going to be the bottom that is going to be dusty and sandy and whatnot. This is Ibn Taymiyyah's point, by the way, that masah is a symbolic gift like tayammum. So to add multiple conditions to tayammum defeats the purpose of tayammum. To add multiple conditions to masah defeats the purpose of masah. That's the point that Ibn Taymiyyah says. Jazakumullah khair.
لا يزال الخير حيا لا يزال إن في الدنيا سلاما وظلال أخبر الأيام أنها في وصال قم بنا وانظر لآيات الجمال قم بنا وانظر لآيات الجمال